it became more robust. I'm not, I'm not deluded enough or arrogant enough to say it's a theory now. It's still a hypothesis. It's a good working theory, I think. But as part of it, because the thing is this. I mean, what is it all about? I mean, this was a question that bothered me a lot. I mean, what is this all about? I mean, the religions are saying this, and some people saying that. Evolutionists, hardcore people that say no, we are completely without any spiritual side. There is no God. There is no spirituality. We are going to the dirt. The worms are going to eat us. And then on the other side, you have the people say no, it's all God or gods or spirits or whatever, and you're going to be judged or not judged, or you'll go into some kind of paradise if you do these things
or not.
But what that means though is that nobody really knows.
Yeah, so you're right. It's basically the same as people arguing anything at all. You'll find every opinion. It's a broad range. People attach themselves to one because they think, well, a lot of people think that. But truly, what are they obfuscating, Becky?
Well, that's the problem, right? We don't know. We don't really know. We know on the edges. Some things we have discovered. Some of the things we did some scientific investigations. And when I say we, I don't mean Dave and I mean, people, humanity. And we know there are certain things that are clearly possible, and not just possible, but they seem to be what it is. So so we went along and kept talking about the hypothesis and what it means, and we made certain predictions. And one of the most significant ones was around population and population control. So because of my interests, I looked at ancient civilizations when I was younger, and then it was my first bit of interest that I had in this whole area of I guess the paranormal, or the what people would consider the fringe sciences, etc. And I was really interested in ancient civilizations. But it seemed that they all were destroyed by something. In fact, destroyed so thoroughly that there really wasn't anything left of them at all.
Yeah.
That we could even remotely consider coherent or helping us along with what was going on. It just didn't happen. There wasn't anything there. So I was fascinated by that. So why were these civilizations being destroyed? And it seemed not just the one, but many. Egypt, Solon. Solon went to Egypt. He was a famous Athenian lawgiver, Solon, and he found that the Egyptians looked at the Greeks as children. And he said, "What do you mean?" "Well, you're children." They said, "Because you remember one flood when there have been so many." Ah, right. And the Maya talk about 4 worlds before this one. We're now living in the 5th world. The Hindus, or generally the Indian, or the subcontinental culture talks about several civilizations before this one, several ages, yugas, as it were. Other cultures have similar notions of a previous golden age, or ages that went before this one, and and the Greeks and Romans remembered them as the time of the Titans, which was followed by the time of the gods, which then was followed by the time of us. The Babylonians, the Sumerians had these kings lists that stretched back into the dim and distant past.
And they overlapped with some of the Egyptian ones at the trailing end, meaning that theirs went back the furthest.
Yeah, and what you find is that the lifespans that were put forward for kings closer to our time were normal. We consider them normal. But the further back in time you went, the longer these people seem to have lived. So to me, it was the question: well, why do these civilizations then? Why do they end? What triggers the destruction of a civilization? And then I came to think of us human beings as a phoenix. We are we are a phoenix with amnesia. So every time our civilization reaches a certain point, it seems, it destroys itself. It's like the phoenix is reborn.
It's par for the course,
from the ashes.
Mate.
Sorry?
Par for the course.
Yeah, that's right. But we don't remember it, or for the most part, we don't remember it. It goes into myth because so much time passes and we don't live as long as we should, etc.
Or three generations away from a farm, and you don't know anything about farming.
Right. Right. You know, you've got to throw things into the ground. Grow, damn, you grow.
Electrolytes, Mackie.
Electrolytes. You mean water like in the toilet? So we are, So we are struck with amnesia. We don't remember much of our past, even though we as we are, or at least scientists are saying, this is another thing we predicted. By the way, just as an aside note, when we started the show, we said that the age of the human race would be pushed further and further into the past, which is exactly what has happened. The advent of Homo sapiens sapiens has been pushed further and further into the past. And when we started the show, Neanderthal was considered an ancestor. Now we understand Neanderthal was a contemporary, and not just a cousin, but a brother or sister for that, because we interbred. And not just with Neanderthal, but with a whole bunch of other
Florensis
as well. And we also said, at the outset years ago, that the human race is going to turn out to be a lot more divergent and colorful, if you will, than we give it credit for today. Do you think that today we look very different? Go back 15, 20, 30, 100,000 years.
Yes.
And you would be astounded at the variety of human races, if you will, that were around. And they are all human, Homo sapiens, if you will, because we're all interbred.
That's
we still have genetic DNA fragments within us. So all of that happened. So these civilizations get destroyed. But why? And then I started to look into the more spiritual aspects. I looked into reincarnation, and lo and behold, it seemed to be a thing. There was a lot of the evidence was mounting for reincarnation, and we've spent a lot of time on this as well. I mean, you can do your own research if you want, but it is astounding. What this showed, though, Dave, and this is something that people have come across. Now I'll mention the Skinwalker Ranch here because it will come up eventually. We seem to be studying phenomena which cannot be studied with what we have considered our brightest and greatest achievement in the field of science, which is scientific method. Scientific method takes something, examines it, tests it, and repeats it and ad nauseum until we believe, we can now with certainty we can say this is what it is. Problem here is that a lot of the phenomena, a lot of things we're trying to study are not in a category of phenomena that can be studied in this way. On the Skinwalker Ranch, for instance, I'll give you an example, and I do urge everybody to watch the TV show, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. It really is a phenomenal show. And like I said, disclosure happened, we snoozed and we missed it. And what we find is that the phenomenon that we're trying to study is studying us right back, or it doesn't respond in a classical way. So we can't cut it apart, and it doesn't react the same way every time we do the same thing. It reacts in different ways, or it doesn't react at all. Or, in fact, how do you test for reincarnation? How can you come up with a foolproof scientific method of testing reincarnation? You can't. Because most of us don't remember it. And the ones that do remember it are usually children. The children before the age of 4 remember it best.
That's right.
Not the only ones, though. And if you go into hypnotic regression, you will remember much. But again, they will say, hypnosis, that's like a hocus pocus science as well. That's not accurate, etc. So you can't really argue with people because it's true. I can't take it like I can take a rock and cut it apart and put it through a spectral analyzer.
Yeah.
And weigh it and look at its displacement, understand its density, and all these wonderful things. I can't do it with this, and that's why we need a different approach to examining these phenomena.
However, Mackie, it's not isolated just to the extraordinary.
No, completely.
Right?
You're right.
And one of the things, as you were describing this, stood out to me so greatly, and that was quantum physics.
Oh yes, absolutely.
It behaves in exactly the same manner.
Yes.
Traditional scientific method doesn't work.
No.
And it's not repeatable. We can't describe it in any other way except it's like magical and fantastic.
Yeah.
One thing though, I think that we gapped here is some of those stories, because I realize why you did, but some of those stories we was talking about where ancient societies documented quite well, rather, prior civilizations or the meetings with the what they called gods, but to us they could be extraterrestrial. one of those, my favorite Sumerians, they documented quite well their interaction and the history of humanity. And it hadn't been translated outside of, because their clay tablets still exist.
Mm-hmm.
So unlike all of the Abrahamic religions, where every new language it encountered had theologians writing it for the new language, and the meaning becomes lost. So not arguing that it's wrong, just saying that the messaging in there is only valid to the contemporary language in which it's been written within. And I think that's really important to note. So you're right. But every time, Meki, I hear the extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
That's completely incorrect.
Correct. That's right.
So all claims. So okay, extraordinary. So number one, who determines what is an extraordinary claim?
Mm-hmm.
Who says that? Well, this claim is normal, or this claim is a standard claim, but this claim over here, it's extraordinary. So there's
there won't be a courtroom. There won't be a courtroom in which someone declares that.
No. The understanding is, generally speaking, that there is a certain standard with which we need to content ourselves with. Now, again, who decided that? Is my question. The answer is, well, the establishment. Now, this is where we're getting sort of to the crux of the issue here, right? There's an agency at work that deliberately steers us away from certain areas of inquiry. It also obfuscates the past. It has under lock and key a whole bunch of knowledge which we should have access to by rights, but we don't. And it is also irresponsible for keeping us in the dark about our true destiny and our true, I guess, place within the multiverse as such. So as I questioned these things, right, I thought, well, what does it all mean then? So why do we go through these mass destruction events? We know human beings are bottleneck events happening, human beings are destroyed, civilizations, so we don't remember anything. Why? And the answer that over many years seemed to present itself is because it's meant to keep us here. In nature, there's certain events which just happen. When something reaches critical mass, and nuclear material here is the best analogy, things just happen spontaneously, right? So if you've got a certain amount of uranium, it'll just sit there and be radioactive. That's all it does. It just sits there being radioactive. That's okay. But the more you add, right, the more radioactive it will be. But there'll come a point when you have added just enough uranium for a reaction to occur spontaneously. You've got enough of something, it'll just happen. It'll just do something, right? And that something is a nuclear reaction, a chain reaction, right? Where it's no longer just radioactive, but it's now producing energy.
Mm-hmm.
It outputs. I mean, it doesn't, not for anyone. And there's actually a natural reactor of that nature in the world. There's a natural reactor that does this, and that's what happens. And so you ask yourself, well, is this the only thing? Is this the only thing that has this kind of critical mass? No, it's not. There are other things in nature where critical mass is reached. The size of an ant colony, the size of a beehive. Certain populations. In fact, a lot of populations are controlled by this. I guess, I don't know, not population limiting mechanism, but some kind of algorithm that seems to then occasion spawning, or the sending out of queens, or splitting of colonies, or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
So that happens. It's a critical event. Critical mass is reached. Something happens, and I think something like that happens for us when we reach a certain population density, and it happened to be for our 7.76 billion.
That's right.
And we use this. It's an algorithm, and one day when the book ever comes out, I'll share it with you guys. But the point is, so we pinpointed that number, and when would we reach this number? We asked ourselves, and we found that projections were it would be reached in 2020, which it did. It still did. Right. So years ago, again, just actually fairly early into the show, we said that something is going to happen in 2020. Something catastrophic potentially. And yeah, sure, whatever, make it, Dave. Yes, I'm nuts. Well, like what? What's going to happen, right?
But we have the shows recorded.
Oh yeah, and lo and behold, it actually did. Now, I remember I said it definitely it's going to be a biological thing, because bang for buck, that's the cheapest way to do it. forget chemical, forget nuclear, forget all that. No, it's going to be biological. But for the longest time, I was bothered by this whole doomsday scenario. It just didn't make any sense to me, right? Why would they choose to just catastrophically?
Yeah, why would they do that to the population of the planet?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they would. I mean, they've gone through it before. We've had catastrophic ends to civilizations before. We see it in the destruction of Puapunku, in the destruction of Atlantis, and the descriptions thereof, right? And it may be natural events, it's possible, but be that as it may, it might have been a comet or meteoroid that was directed to hit Earth by the parasitic
other forces.
Powers. Yep. They're much more advanced than we are. Now, so turns out SARS-CoV-2 happened. And as we learned later, Dave, 2020 was also the year where the Aboriginal elders would gather at Uluru for a sacred ceremony to raise, well, in my simple layman's terms, to raise the vibrational frequency of the planet.
That's right.
And at that point, and even before that, we started to understand energies. And
that was about ascension.
Correct. And it was, in fact, Tesla who said it, give me the right frequency, I can shake the world apart.
That's right.
So again, this is all happening. Look, we are all vibrating at some frequency. That's just nature. It's just the nature of the reality we inhabit. So we're all part of somewhere along the electromagnetic spectrum. We are somewhere there vibrating away. And it seems that this vibrational frequency has a profound impact on our spirituality as well. And it seems also further that in 2020, actually started 2019, but it really hit us in 2020. What happened was, it wasn't necessary to kill off a whole bunch of people, but that's still coming, by the way. It was sufficient, it seems, to lower our vibrational frequency. Sufficient so this ascension event, which we call the awareness cascade, could not happen, and it didn't. It didn't happen, right? Now, it may have been worse if the Aboriginal elders did not perform the ceremony.
There's a good point.
Things might have been much worse, right? But they turned out not to be. I mean, not catastrophic, but certainly not awesome, right? So the ascension did not happen. We did not end up ascending into the higher vibrational frequencies, thus becoming more enlightened. And this would have been an event that everybody could have participated in, more or less, if you understand what I'm getting at. We would all have been able to ascend, or well, almost, right? And I fear that the people that, people's maybe too good a term, the people that keep us here, they are probably no longer able to ascend because they have been here so long they have become institutionalized. Because I also believe that they remember all of it, right? They haven't actually died, as it were, right? They have in fact lived here, and because they didn't have this reincarnation purge, I like to call it, that we have had, they have to remember all of it, and I think they're now suffering, from mental degradation, or spiritual, or whatever degradation you want to call it. Doesn't really matter what you want to call it, but I think that's what they're suffering from now, and they're no longer able to fully participate in any ascension. So they want to keep us all here as well, right? And I think that's where we are. I think this is finally where we've come to be, and we still need to do our level best to get out of here. And that's the essence of the hypothesis. But there were other things we were right about along the way as well. We looked at some, we looked at the killings of the microbiologists, Dave. Right?
Yes, that's right. Extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, these are the heads of their fields working on things. I mean, these are top-notch guys and girls that were killed. Maybe they were the ones that couldn't be brought along for the ride, as it were, to this whole SARS-CoV-2 thing. And we haven't seen the end of it yet. It's getting worse and worse and worse. Long COVID is a real thing. The effect on male fertility specifically, that's a thing.
Yeah.
And that's going to play out over the next 20 and 30 years. Couple that with climate change and other things that are coming our way, I don't think we'll ever get to the point, even if we hit the next number in the algorithm. I've got to look it up now. I can't remember what it is. I don't think we can.
I don't think it's achievable. Yeah.
No, I don't think we can. I think we're too afraid and too uncertain, like we talked about before, right? The twin pillars of control fear and uncertainty, where uncertainty is the more effective tool, right? Because it doesn't elicit a response. Now, evolutionary speaking, if you're bent that way, the fight or flight response is a reaction to fear.
Yep.
If you're afraid, you either run away, you evacuate your bowels, you empty your bladder, and you run for your life, right? That's what you usually people throw up as well.
Experience.
But I'm sorry, but that's what happens. Or you discover your internal spinal column and you fight, right? Either or. Now some animals, this is interesting, play dead.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what to do. I don't know if I should run away. I don't know if I should fight. And that's what uncertainty does. And that's where we are. We don't know. Oh, Dave, fight? Flight? Oh, I'm just going to lie down here and pretend to be dead. And that's what we're doing. We're choosing neither. Because we don't know what the right course of action is. Because there is no clear and present danger in fight. There's nothing we can actually run away from. It is all very nebulous. The war, and this started with what doesn't start with the war on terror. It started sort of, in the war between ideologies. But in the war of terror is the best illustration of what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the war on terror. So you're fighting an abstract term. Terrorism. What's terrorism? Well, terror, as a definition, is the action or ability to strike fear into other people. That's terror, right? Mm-hmm. The ability to strike fear into someone. How do you fight that? It's a natural state. People are afraid. It's what happens in the world, right? Now,
I stood in my yard waving a sword around and I didn't hit anything.
This reminds me of the Chinese emperor who lost his son to the sea. So his son went out on a voyage and drowned. So he orders his army down to the beach and swords out, spears out, whatever, and stab and slash at the ocean.
Mm.
That makes sense, That's something we should do. But that's really what this is, right? So we are incapable of an action because there's nothing to fight. I mean, terrorism. How do you fight terrorism? It's not a person. It's not a country. It's an ideology. It's an idea, right? Now, I can tell you, all the military heads, they were relieved when they could finally bomb Afghanistan and then bomb Iraq, and then because people at ISIS specifically started, taking over Syria, parts of Iraq, etc. It was great. We could actually fight someone, right? But other than that, the war on terrorism, the long war. What does it mean? The war on drugs, Dave. That was sort of a precursor to that. How do you fight a war on drugs? You don't. It's a nonsense term. It's complete nonsense, right? The war on terrorism, nonsense. It means nothing. Because the thing is this. It's also a matter of definition. So all drugs, by definition, are just a substance.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The cocaine, heroin, and of course, before the milk of the poppy, etc., before it's refined into heroin, and crack cocaine. These are all substances. Yeah. Now they can be used in a medical scenario, for instance, in a therapeutic setting, which we all have had happened to us mostly. If you had painkillers, if you have ever had an operation where you had to go under, pain treatment,
opiates.
Exactly. So you would have experienced the effect of some of these drugs. Maybe not all, but some. And a lot of these drugs have therapeutic uses. Certainly marijuana is great.
You can talk about aspirin in the same way.
Completely. And we still don't know why or how aspirin works, by the way. It's a birch. It's the bark of the birch tree.
That's right.
The compound. Anyway, that's beside the point. So we have all of that. But then, of course, you can use the drugs, to make money and have a whole underground illegal economy, etc., etc. So you can't really fight something that has a different point of view. And the same with terrorism. So drugs can be good or bad. That's my point. It can be good or bad. Terrorism. Well, if you're a terrorist for this person, you're a freedom fighter for the other. Let me simple example. The Kurdish Workers' Party. Their aim is an independent Kurdish state. That's what they want, right? So if you're a Kurd, these are my freedom fighters. They're fighting for the Kurdish people. We want to have our own nation. We want to be independent. Blah blah blah. Right? Okay. The Turkish people feel very different. No, this is a terrorist organization. The PKK, terrorist organization. And then the Americans agree, yeah, that's the terrorist organization. Sometimes we flip-flop. The ANC, the African National Congress. Everybody remember that? Back in the day? It's a terrorist organization.
Oh, great.
Nelson Mandela was leading it, okay, and the ANC was bombing. They were bombing South African targets of apartheid, and other countries too, but violence and terrorism. They're now the ruling party, well, with some difficulties, of South Africa. After the massive change that happened to South Africa, the end of apartheid, etc., the ANC became a legitimate party. Prior to the forming of the State of Israel, there were a lot of terrorist organizations, as we call them today, trying to fight for dominance in what was then Palestine, right? Both Jewish groups as well as Arab groups. And the British said, "Well, this is enough. I can't take it anymore." And off the British went. Yeah, get out. They ran away, and it turns out that the Israelis were just better funded and managed to take over large sections of that country and founded Israel. And so former terrorists were now legitimate heads of government. The point I'm making here is there is no clear-cut definition for any of this. It is a point of view. The same people that we trained in the 70s to fight the Russians, in the 80s as well, 70s, 80s, these were the same people whose children and grandchildren fought the Americans in the 90s, noughties. Okay? The same people, Afghanis, right? They were Mujahideen then, and then they were Taliban later. I mean, okay, they're different factions and they have slightly different belief systems, but a lot of these people would have received training, and a lot of these people would have. All they're doing is they want independence for Afghanistan. I mean, the British tried to be the Mongols tried to take off. Everybody tried to take Afghanistan, right, and keep it because it is such a critical part of the Silk Road. I mean, for the trade from east to west, it is critical. Because the thing is, if you can't go through the Himalayas and then through Central Asia, you have to go all the way around India, and then you have to go all the way around Cape Horn, right? Or go the other way, go around the Cape of Good Hope. So that's really hard. It's a lot easier in many ways to just go via the land, right? It just isn't. There's only certain passes you can go through, and Afghanistan happens to be on the Silk Road, so quite important strategically. And completely unconquerable. You can't conquer Afghanistan. It's not possible. Good luck to you. I don't care how many people you have. Alexander the Great tried. Didn't really make that work.
I think everyone's tried it.
Everyone has tried it, right? So it is a matter of point of view. So we have been left uncertain. Well, what? Because this is, if you really follow it through and you look at it from a historic timeline perspective, Dave, you can actually see it. We had real enemies. Like in World War I, the Germans were fighting the French and the English and the Russians and the Turks. Countries were fighting each other. It was easily. Why? It doesn't matter. The reasons, well, a bit nebulous, but we are fighting countries. There are borders.
So much easier.
Yeah, we understand what we're doing. Then it sort of became, after World War II, certainly, because again, World War II was easy. Fighting the Germans and the Italians and the Japanese, easy. We're fighting nations, and they want to do bad things, or we want to do bad things. It doesn't really matter. I mean, war crimes on either side, no one is blameless here. But then, in the
Korean War was complicated because you didn't know who the enemy was.
Bingo.
That's right.
The Korean War, the Vietnam War, and then all these conflicts started popping up. These proxy conflicts where the Americans were fighting the Russians, really, or the Chinese, right? One or the other. But they're becoming more complex. And the old world order had finished. There's a new world order, but it's more nebulous. We now have these blocks of countries that believe the same thing. They don't all have the same political system, mind you, right? They don't, but they all believe in capitalism, whatever that means. And then you've got the other countries, which are all different as well, and they believe in communism, right? It was getting more and more nebulous, and now we're living in a world, some 50 years into this experience, which offers no certainty. Boundaries, countries don't really mean anything. The corporate world is really what matters now. Money moves. Money is no longer bound by country either. I mean, corporations work across borders, take money from here to there. They're, for tax reasons, they've got the headquarters in countries that are completely unrelated to the country they come from, or where they, in fact, make their money, whatever it is they might be doing. So it has become a lot more wishy-washy. And that has actually now also been reflected into society, Dave.
Yeah.
There's this beautiful thing that Dave sent through to me, spelling bee. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and try to find it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Where a child asks, so if in a spelling bee, let me explain this. In a spelling bee, you're given a word, okay, and then you have to spell it. Straightforward, right? But you can ask for a definition of the word if you want to. If you don't know what the word is, you ask for a definition, and then that might help you spell it. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, they'll use it, and the other one is can you please use it in a sentence?
So yeah, exactly.
Hmm?
So this child, I mean, it's a comedy skit, but this child comes up, and the man says your word is woman. The child looks at the two judges and goes, "Oh, could you give me a definition, please?" And from there, it just develops into hilarity.
because they look awkwardly at each other, realizing that they can't do that now.
Yeah,
they can't define the word woman. It's hilarious.
And this is I think it is symptomatic of our time. It's a wonderful analogy for the times because I'm a very simple guy. I was born in the '60s. I know exactly what a woman is.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind. I also know what a man is in my mind. And you could be gay or whatever, right? Or you could be transgender. And still, I understand what all this means. But I also know what a woman and I know what a man is, right? But we're now living in a world where the definition of these seemingly simple biological terms, because that's all they are, have become very, very complicated and fraught with danger because, well, you look like a woman, you were born a woman, but do you identify as a woman, right? You're a man, you're born a man, you look like a man, but do you identify as a man? See, we now are living in a world where even simple, or things that used to be simple in my time, are no longer simple. They add to the confusion. We're living in this confusion, uncertainty, because where does it end? Where does it end? What kind of society are we moving into? What will be allowed? What will be taboo? Where I mean, is it good manners? Because my parents, I guess, they brought me up to be courteous and have good manners. So it's an instinct for me to open the door for a woman,
mm-hmm.
or even in general, just
anyone even older than myself.
Yeah. Yeah, if I'm in a position to open the door
mm-hmm.
for someone and they might need it, then I will do that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're living in a world where that is no longer welcome, where it might be offensive.
Oh yeah.
Where you might experience some serious negative repercussions of what you deem to be a good act, and it is confusing. And again, more and more are we pushed into this confusing state because there is no certainty. And to some extent, Dave, I want to say here, quantum mechanics is to blame. Because while nobody...
I want to hear this.
I know, right? So while nobody really understands what happens on a quantum level, we have conducted experiments. We have, right? And some of that has seeped into the cultural mind. The most obvious way is through science fiction, but even more popular science fiction concepts like the multiverse, right? So are we living in a multiverse? Is this a multiverse? If it's a multiverse, then does it matter what I do? I mean, what actually matters? And some people say, well, nothing is real. Nothing is actually physically there. So you touch the world around you, right? But then people tell you, scientists tell you, well, it's not really there. In fact, you never really touch anything, which is true. You never really actually touch anything because you can't, because what you're feeling is the repulsive atomic forces of two objects. That's what you're feeling. You don't touch anything. You're feeling the repulsive forces. And the truth is, initially we thought, an atom, that's like a solid thing. An atom in Greek means undividable. It's no longer divisible. It's the smallest thing, an atom. We now know that an atom is not the smallest thing, so we probably shouldn't have called it an atom. But so it's okay. You look at the atom. Okay, that's matter. Then it's not matter. It's mostly empty space. Okay,
and 99.9999 repeating empty space. Empty space.
So you got electrons going around the nucleus, right? But these electrons, they're popping in and out of existence as well, right? And not only that, you can't even determine where they are exactly.
No, that's right. So right? To make it scaled, if I gave you a basketball and I had an orange, and the orange is the relative size of the electron to the nucleus, how far away do you think I'd have to be to scale that to the size of an atom?
you would have to be several kilometers out.
20 mile.
There you go.
That's a lot of nothing.
That's
And you don't even
that's
know where I am.
32 That's 32 kilometers.
Yeah, so you don't even know where I am, but I'm there somewhere.
Yep. Now think about that for a second. So it's mostly empty space then. Then they go, okay, well, there must be something else there. Now they talk about string theory, right? Now other people saying there's no string. And then they look at dark matter. Well, in order for the universe to work according to the way, or to the formulas that we have, like to our formulas, right? There needs to be dark matter because there's not enough matter in the universe to make it all work. There's not enough energy in the universe to make it all stick together. So there must be therefore dark energy, and therefore must be. Sorry.
Unless there's a multiverse, because that's the multiverse description. Because there's other matter in there that we can't see, but it's there.
Yes. Yeah. And gravity is not strong enough a force either compared to the other forces.
No, that's right.
I mean, simple example: you got a magnet at home, pick something up that's magnetic. You shouldn't be able to do that, but you are, because you're counteracting gravity. Right?
And it's directly. Millions. Magnetism is millions times stronger than gravity.
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense.
No.
But nonetheless, there it is. So all of these things, right? So that means that all the matter that we perceive to be, our reality is solid stuff. I'm just knocking on my table here, and I'm clapping. I've got a glass bottle here. So to us, that's all real, except it isn't. It's mostly not here, and that's really hard to understand. But a lot of this thinking, right? Because we used to be really certain. In fact, in the late 19th century, the British said, "Oh, we've learned everything there is to know. We've reached capacity. We've got all the knowledge in the world, right?
Close the textbooks."
Yeah, that's right. But in fact, burn them. Just in case. Burn the empty pages. You can leave everything else. No, but clearly wrong, right? But while most people don't actually understand it, right, on an intellectual level, they don't really understand it. They hear about it. I mean, people talk about it. It's a scientific discussion. People hear it, and it seeps into popular culture. People cannot help but know about it. Okay, and that's why, to some extent, quantum mechanics is to blame for some of the confusion. Because, well, what is real? What is reality?
We stopped questioning the validity of things. So, for instance, and my favorite beef that I have, and I'm a supporter of the American beef industry, by the way. Don't cancel me. So there I go, self-censored. So one of the things that got me, Meki, was when figuratively and literally became the same definition. They're completely different. One means that I'm making basically a simile, and the other one is I'm actually describing an event. Now, when they became, because of misuse, which is poor education, when that became the single definition for both of those words, I realized we were done for. That was the end. That was the beginning of the end for me when I saw that language has, and look, I respectfully understand the use of language and how that has changed, and how it changes, and how it's never static, like a postcard from that 1970s beach resort we stayed at. Right? It doesn't look the same now. The tide's different too, by the way. But where we're at now, with the amount of uncertainty that we've discovered, I'm backing you up, that everything is possible. Yes, it's permeated through to our children now in this uncertainty principle, where everything is a thing. It's either happened, hasn't happened, it's both happened and hasn't happened, or it's not even a thing. All of those outcomes are completely possible. Yeah. So in the double slit experiment, I fire a single electron at a double slit in a piece of metal, and it's either didn't go through either of them, went through both, went through the left one or the right one. What? Well, yeah, it's only probability. So if you look at your life as just, spinning a roulette wheel and the probability of something is just an equation, how does that change our society?
Well, on a very fundamental level, it gives you, it doesn't give you, you no longer have a foundation to
And
work
nothing's
from.
black and white anymore. I mean,
No.
on or off, or yes or no.
Yeah. So you can start questioning things. I mean, I'm not saying that it's solely to blame for that. I mean, there are other factors here as well, right? And certain actions that have directed us down a certain path. But I believe that to some extent, this confusion that we have today, and maybe gender fluidity, things like that, are partially due to the fact that we don't have certainty anymore. Now, there's other things such as scientific advancements which actually allow you to change your gender these days, so you can actually do that.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's it's no longer just this pipe dream, but ultimately we no longer have the certainty that we once had of the world. There is no longer this, because look, in my grandfather's time, or your grandfather's time for that matter, chances are, or your great grandfather for that matter, depending how young you are, chances are that your grandfather or your grandparents might have had the same job the whole life. Maybe they took on the business of their father or whatever it might be. But I'm not saying that's, but potentially, right? Because there was long-term certainty in those things. Even if there was wars or whatever, but you always need a baker, and always need a bricklayer, you need lawyers, bankers, whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of that. Right? Now, in my lifetime, professions that I grew up with no longer exist. Professions that I had are either on the decline or no longer exist. In fact, when I went into IT some 25-ish almost years, Jesus my God.
Don't look at the calendar.
No, don't look at the calendar. Don't count the gray hairs. The job that I started in is very much on the decline.
Yeah.
It almost doesn't exist anymore because it's no longer necessary, right? And then other jobs I had within it, they either no longer exist in Australia, so they've moved offshore, or are also no longer required. Whereas in my grandfather's time and my great-grandfather's time and so on and so forth, for hundreds of years into the past, people had job certainty. Maybe not job security because other things happened, but you knew that this job would exist. Like they've said, you need a blacksmith. You have to have a blacksmith. Where's the blacksmith? There's the blacksmith. Okay, off we go. Because the rate of change was so slow. The rate of change today, coupled with everything else, is astronomical.
Yeah.
We are changing so fast that most people can simply no longer keep up with the rate of change that we're experiencing. We can't. And again, I think that's deliberate as well, right? So it's anything to get us off balance, Dave. Anything to throw us off.
I think we're on the ropes.
To make 100%. It's a rope-a-dope for us, I'll tell you. We are no longer in charge.
Yeah, with the greatest respect to those who identify as something that doesn't seem apparent at face value, with the greatest respect to all of those people, I'm really not concerned. I would just like to be able to address them correctly, but no one's going to wear a he, she, a Tickle Me Elmo t-shirt, right? That's my joke. I don't really mind what your preference is or who you identify as. I don't mind. You can identify as whatever you want. I still think at some point, Mickey, it'll come back to, well, I just identify as me, and we'll have ignored the public statements around who we are. If we just boil it down to a person, if we just become people as persons, and your identity remains yours, your identity to not disclose to anybody, that would be ideal. But in this advertising world where you've got to be an A-frame out there with a honk if you like Jesus, right? On the sidewalk, on the street corner in the big city, and you've got to tell everyone on the whiteboard, or you're on your A-frame, who you identify as. That's so important to everybody. I think we've missed the point.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Like, I'm not saying it's a wrong thing, and not at all. I mean, in actual support of people who have felt as though they've been born into the wrong body. Should you use something medically? I think you should take all the time you need to do that, and not change it. It's the same as the advice that my father gave me when he said, "Look, son, I've got one tattoo. I was in the Navy, and our Navy friends, we would on the Terps. We had a skinful, and we went and got tattoos. And one of the stops that they had in the Navy. He said, "I didn't think about it. That's all there is. That's what I have." And he said, I got off pretty lightly because he had a ribbon with 2 bluebirds pulling the ribbon from either end, and it says mother because he loved his mum. Right. My dad's advice to me was, if I intend on getting a tattoo, wait an entire year and then see if you still want it.
Yeah.
Because you may not want it. You change. The way you think changes. Things about you, your world, the friends you take, all of those things contribute to who you are. And if only 10% of your friends' personalities rub off on you, you might go in a different direction. So,
Right.
take your time and analyze and reflect upon who you are. And I think this is what we're missing now, because, like you said, Mickey, the world is changing so damn fast. It's now in the hands of big corporate. It's really not in the hands of government anymore. Those days have gone.
I agree.
Big government can do what they want, but still big corporate is the one that's running. It runs the show, and it runs across boundaries.
It's we're living in a largely fascist society, meaning
Yes.
that the power lies with the large corporations, with industry, as it were, and that's just. I mean, you can love it or lump it. That's just what it is.
It is what it is. That's right.
We've allowed it to happen, right, for the most part. I mean, there's no one to blame but us, really, ultimately, because it's just, here we are. Would we have chosen something else?
Yeah, as slow as we were to react to its power, it's now out of the box. The genie's out of the box. It's not going back in. Yeah. So in the World Economic Forum's view, they run the entire planet, and it's just for them to do whatever they wish. And I think that's the take home for me, Meki, with all the things we're talking about here in the retrospective, about the age of humanity, what people have believed in, what we currently have access to, what's being redacted, because that's my big point. The Catholic Church redacted a whole bunch of stuff from everybody for thousands of years. Where we're at right now is a new level of discovery. We have what's opening up to our civilization is the fact that other civilizations exist. Life does exist elsewhere. And I think from a top level, that is an amazing time to be alive, rather than being hung out to dry or burned alive at the stake in the past, for even suggesting that Galileo that the Earth wasn't in the center of the universe. Crazy. Right? So I think right now we're in a good place, but I think civilization is monkeypoxing, blistering itself away, and right? It's just becoming a big pile of sputum.
Yes.
And it's everywhere you look is a door, and behind it is a new thing that we're supposed to be adopting. I think the stability of our civilization is equal to, I could compare it, a side-by-side comparison here, compare and contrast, about our climate for being able to maintain, farming. We're going to have to, I think, create, all the high-rise. If you turned all those into farms, whoever's left, because farming in the outdoors is going to become unreasonable. We won't have summer crops because it'll be too hot. And winter crops will have to be underwater. We have to grow rice everywhere. That likes wet feet, right? And ginger loves wet feet.
So, but that's the thing. People don't realize that our entire ecosystems that we are used to in wherever we are going to change. Europe is going to change completely.
Yeah.
It's no longer going to be that
the food bowls of the nations, the food bowls, have moved around. Yeah. Remember, Egypt was the food bowl.
Yeah. Yes.
With the Nile flooding.
Might be again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be. Yeah.
Right.
So Northern Africa, where the the desert is, if we could evacuate that sand, we could see it come back to a lush forest.
Yes. And then predictions are, or some of the modeling shows that North Africa or the Sahara are in fact going to be green, whereas the southern parts of Europe will become desert.
It's funny that the temperate zones are going to become deserts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Ah. Oh, I know.
So it's, yeah, look, it is, and climate change or what we're having, global warming doesn't mean that it's going to get hotter everywhere at all.
Mm-hmm.
Some places will get colder, some will get hotter, some will get more wet, as it were. Right? So it's look, we don't know. It's a free fall, pretty much.
It is. The polar storms will get larger.
Yes.
And the anomaly storms, like the hurricanes and the cyclones, depending on where you are on the planet, the typhoons, they will get larger in width and more devastating. If we was to see that the weather patterns change to a certain extent to have more tornadoes, I think we're going to have some grief. We might, in fact, go underground.
I can see that. Excuse me.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Not in the large flat areas, that would be dangerous.
Yeah.
Because, live by the sword, die by the sword, make a tunnel, get flooded, right? That would be bad. But, hillsides, a bunch of islands, like the archipelago, that Australia would become. I'm looking forward to it. I want to tackle this head on, Mickey. I want to get climate change in a headlock. Rub its head. Good on you. Look at you doing that thing.
Good luck to you, eh?
Yeah. Well, I still think, Mickey, our idea of having floating houses gets past most of this.
Anyway, I completely agree. It would be nice too, we will have to find new modes of existence, I guess. We have to find new modes of dealing with the world. Okay, the way we live today, right? Our lifestyles will have to change.
Yeah. Rooftop farming.
Yes. I mean, look at any suburb anywhere, like in the Western world. You have nature strips, just grass and a tree.
That's right.
That will be a fruit tree one day, or there'll be vegetables or something, because it'll be necessary.
Just like the Russian couple up the street, they farm every square millimeter of their block.
Yeah, but that's just what you have to. We will have to do that. The meat consumption on the scale that we have today is going to be completely impossible.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just not going to happen. So, I mean, I'm not saying you have to become a vegetarian, but it wouldn't hurt to get used to the idea that you're going to eat more vegetables going forward, because that's what most of the world is doing already anyway.
Insects,
a lot of the world doesn't consume anywhere near the meat that the Americans or Australians or even some of the Europeans consume. Right? So
30 million chickens in a year just from one brand.
You know what the poor man's steak is?
What?
Rice and beans, my friend. Rice and beans.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I don't mind that at all. And a good mushroom too, by the
way. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are all things that we have to get used to. Insects. A lot of people in the world eat insects.
Yeah.
And our insects, especially worms, like certain kinds of worms, are really perfect foods for us. Right?
You'll never guess.
So, I know, right?
There's the music.
Time flies.
It sure does. Look, this has been David Meck's Shiny Side Out, Hour 2, Episode 540. Coming up next is Jer Bear to sail you on into the night or into the morning with his great show, After Hours. Call in, be part of his show. That's how we started. Take